Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Tuesday edition of the Diamond Network show called Voices of the Alternative World. Our focus is finding ways and means and inspiration that will be leading us into a new way of being and community and living on planet Earth. We're exploring ways of sustainable living and harmony and enhancing the flow of life on our planet, all of life, as we are all one. And the river of life flows through us all. I'm just giving a little bit of an intro as far as the focus of our show here. And this evening, my guest is one of the very first persons I met as I arrived in the Haight-Ashbury scene in '68. In fact, he could have been the very first person I met. His name is Belden Gelf, and I met him at the Here and Now restaurant at Haight and Scott Street, one of the first places I happened to step into when I arrived at Haight-Ashbury. Just walking up the street, and there was the restaurant, and I said, this looks like an interesting place. So I popped in there, and there he was. you were very good at greeting new people. And what we always do at the beginning of the show is we invoke the law of one, which it states that we are all one, and we only want that which serves the greater good of all concerned. So I am now going to do that. It just sets the tone for the evening. We are all one. When one is harmed, all are harmed. When one is helped, all are helped. Therefore, in the name of who I am, and I am one with all, I ask that only that which is the highest good of all concerned happen here and now and throughout all time and space. I give thanks that this be done. So be it. And now Belden is especially good at Geodesics. He had some personal experience with Buckminster Fuller. And Belden, I'd like you to talk a little bit about that and tell people about your experience with Buggy Fuller and what you learned from him and what you've been doing all these years with the geodesic domes. I know you've been doing a lot with them. You've built a lot of them, and you've just, taught kids about the geodesics. And so, go ahead and start to tell us your story. Yeah.
Well, that was an interesting cycle in my life. I was married with 2 children at the time, when and I was starting to get a successful practice in architecture in Santa Barbara, California, when I met an old architect, and he turned me on. I was aware of Buckminster Fuller. In fact, the architect I worked for, the reason I went to work for them is they had a great geodesic dome, like almost equivalent to the New York City proposal that Buckminster made for enclosing New York with a great dome. Anyway, this group was an advanced architect, and I might say that there was an architectural renaissance going on in California when I started my apprenticeship with actual architectural firms. So anyway, this senior architect, Carl John Sterner, told me that if he were a young man like me, he would go and sweep the most important architect's office's floor until he got into the practice. So I took him by his word, and that led me to negotiate with Buckminster Fuller for an assistantship in Southern Illinois University. And relative to my family, it was a little bit too far out for them. And I had access to 52 hours of Buckminster Fuller's reel-to-reel tapes called Everything I Know About the Universe. And I created a document so you could, it was reel-to-reel tape, so I set the counter and then write the key terms that were covered on the tape. And that was quite an experience. So I ended up with a little booklet that accessed the audio tape, Everything I Know About the Universe by Buckminster Fuller. Mm-hmm. And that was quite, gave me lots of good comprehensive knowledge about the patterns on the planet, and set the stage for my communal adventure, because I knew the capitalist system could not continue the kind of work that Fuller was doing. But the communal system that I was channeling to be in came in San Francisco, when I also walked into the Here and Now restaurant and talked with many of the members there who were quite interesting, and they liked what I had to say, and they invited me to join the commune. Anyway, getting back to Buckminster Fuller, I was in his office one day, and one of the highlights, I had several highlights, I'll just discuss one, was I asked Bucky, I said, you know, the Guggenheim Museum was a perfect opportunity to do a geodesic dome at the top of the spiraling stairway going up to the showing the exhibition, and this set the stage. Buckminster said, "Well, you know, I talked to Frank." He referred to Wright as Frank. He said, "I talked to him about the possibility," and Wright said, "Well, I'll talk to the family about it and see what they have to say, and then get back to you." So, as the story Fuller was relating to me, said, well, when they got back to me, the family decided that they didn't want to do a geodesic dome there because it wouldn't be right. Anyway, that was the punchline there, and if you look at the early presentation of the Guggenheim Museum, which is an extraordinary piece of work to exhibit modern art, the first design in the model was a series of concentric circles that spiraled around, very similar in spirit to the later Fly's Eye dome that Fuller developed. Anyway, enough of Buckminster Fuller. There's a whole world there. I recommend the listeners tune into his last two books. One that discusses the economic system called The Grunch of the Giant. And that grunch is the grand regional cash heist. It pretty well covers how the Federal Reserve swindled us out of our free cash flow constitutional money, which later on is decoded by Alan Michael in his 50-year project to bring the everlasting gospel to Earth people, to harvest them so they can move on out of this ruined solar system. Did you know we're living in a ruined solar system, and that it was established by space beings who cut the stones with laser technology and levitated them into place and built all the pyramid temple cities around the planet so the souls could be redeemed and go back to normal universe without causing the great solar catastrophe that came to this planet, which they call Earth, dirt. Now, imagine that, calling a planet dirt. Now, any people that would call their planet dirt, I would say you can't trust them at all. But anyway, that's my point of view.
Well, there's other names for the planet, but anyway.
Do you remember them?
And good organic soil. Well,
Placentia is the spiritual name given by galactic beings as this rehab planet. And I might add, very important, that Star Trek failed. You know, Star Trek gave us the cell phone vision, which we're talking across the continent with, which is quite an extraordinary piece of technology. In fact, the first big article I wrote for our Universal Communicator newspaper talks about the developing technology, and it was the back page of the Universal Communicator, which was priced at 35 cents. Can you imagine that? 35 cents for a great vision on communal living. There's only a couple copies left. 2 copies that I know of, and I have.
That was published in the early 70s originally, or late 60s.
No, late 60s, 68, I believe.
Yeah.
I remember going on shift with Bill Best at the Here and Now restaurant that you referred to, the wonderful little macrobiotic natural food restaurant. And we kept talking about, we got to work on a newspaper and get it out. But it was a long time coming. And I did the back page by hand with a 3-color acetate that printed out quite nice. And in it, you're in a spaceship looking at the planet out the window, which is sort of a psychedelically drawn. And on the console of the ship, it says GT C, GTC in large letters, and then in smaller letters, graphic television computer. And the idea, the conception of that is, as you got closer to the planet, the Earth was, the dirt was divided up into triangular grid corresponding to Buckminster Fuller's Dymaxion map, which is very important. That's an important piece of work.
Yeah. We've been talking about sacred geometry on the Diamond Show, and it's interesting on Monday. And that aspect of it is really interesting to me, just how it's reflected in nature and all the structures in nature. You know, like the sunflower with all the seeds, and the bees with their hives, and that sacred geometry has really been something that people have been becoming more and more aware of.
Yeah, sacred geometry is a generalized term. However, at the time when Buckminster Fuller left his body, I was led and I was living communally, I was led to do 3 pages of which later became Adventures of Polyhedra, Mathematics the Game. There's a little booklet that's on the internet at Galactic Messenger. You can download copies of it. Anyway, in this these 3 pages that I hand drew and then later rendered for the book is called. It came out when Bucky Fuller passed away, and that led me to my long study of geometry to produce a book that's targeting the 6th grade of which I did some prototype classes where they learn how to make all the different polyhedra, and it was quite a successful class I did at the Waldorf School, and they treated me with great respect, and most of the students got into a diligent, serious, and enjoyable study of polyhedra geometry. Anyway, I believe this booklet is going to revolutionize the way we teach mathematics because it balances the analytical side of the brain and the intuitive side of the brain. So the right and left brain get synchronized and work like almost like Tesla's coil and his power systems to broadcast electricity without wires. Anyway,
I have
the synchronizing gives the students the gamma energy so they can use 100% of the mind that's available. Right now, people on this planet only use 10%. And as my friend Joseph said, of that 10%, they misuse most of it in creating the negative effects.
I have your book loading right now on the internet in front of me. So I'm seeing it's taken a while to load because I just have dial-up, but I'm looking at some of the pictures here.
Yeah, it's I have specific templates to make the polyhedra, and I've been in Florida. I've been making these models, and they're quite interesting. I've been using that glitter paper or that laser paper, that reflective paper with patterns in it on the different panels, and then I've gotten some great color combinations, and the universe keeps teaching me all the details on how to fine-tune the construction and so forth. And going to recycling, we had our transmission repaired at a terrific transmission specialist, and they pack their gaskets in a cardboard that's just perfect for making models. So I've been going there and getting all these cardboard pieces and cutting out the facets of mostly the 2-frequency, 12-foot diameter geodesic sphere, which is a 1.5-inch equals a foot. And then I made a wooden model of it, 3 inches equals a foot, that is hanging in our space. And then I made a full-size one, 12 feet diameter, which I've erected. And it was kind of funny. What led me to do these and make so many models of it was I consider it the missing link in my geodesic study, which is geared after people take the polyhedra class. Then they're equipped to do the geodesics and actually solve living accommodations with them. As you recall, we did quite a few of them in the commune.
Yes. Yeah, one of the first things I noticed, were your lampshades. When I joined the commune, you have all these lampshades with, geodesics and all these drawings on them.
They were all those lampshades were polyhedra. They specifically, the language of polyhedra is terrific, and that's why it's sacred geometry is a highly generalized term, but polyhedra is very specific because polyhedra means is plural, so you have a number of different regular polyhedra that you can make, and then a polyhedron is a single, and the one that you saw was called the truncated icosahedron, or the soccer ball. So the kids say, hey, let's go play soccer, right? And but what they're actually playing is spherical truncated icosahedral ball. That's the scientific.
Yeah, because that would be something if you said that to kids. Why don't you go play this truncated icosahedron ball game? Yeah, well, that you see it in so many different places. I guess the reason that
the big sphere at the New Year's celebration, that's a three frequency. Frequency, if you take one, there's 20 triangles in an icosahedron, and if you take one of the 20 triangles and divide it up into facets on each edge, like if you divide it into two parts of the edge, and then and triangulate it, you get 4 triangles. 2 times 2 is 4, or 2 to the second power. And at a 3 frequency, you get 9 triangles. And there's some other interesting ratios that come out to stimulate the analytical side of the brain, which I'll be happy to share with people when I have the visual models to present. Yeah. Because one of the assumptions of the book and the importance of downloading it is that everything in the book is represented with visual models. If you don't have a visual model, it's not in the book. So what I'm saying is that also the 3 pages I did with when Fuller passed away was called Spherical Excess, which shows that when you subtract the planar from the spherical configuration, the difference is always 720 degrees, which equals 1 tetrahedron. A tetrahedron is the basic of matter patterning throughout the universe. If it doesn't have a tetrahedron, it won't crystallize. So that's very interesting. So yeah. That was an interesting thing, and you keep learning more about it. That form I was very drawn to when I was living on Maui. There's the intersecting double tetrahedron with the, it looks like the Star of David, but the Star tetrahedron. I had some little. I had some little. Yeah, I have some. Yeah, I made some little. I found a pattern on the internet, and I made some, little ones that I have, as well as a few other things that I did. So I was really drawn to that form. It just kind of came to me, and I put it on some of my T-shirts, hand-painted clothing that I did when I was on Maui. I put that symbol on there. Yeah. Well, remember little Gracie? Little Gracie and I got together one evening with Sheila, and one thing I teach is the right useness and relationship with children when they're ready to receive information. And Gracie was really interested in this polyhedron. I even forgot the particular one we made. And Sheila, her mother, allowed her to stay up, till 9 or 9:30 or 10, I don't know, to make the model. And when she finished, she took it to school, and the teachers liked it so much they put it on exhibit. So Gracie got brownie points for her adventure with me. So, oh yeah, that was a nice little story. She is a good student, She how kids scribble and do things? Well, I gave her a little lesson in watercoloring. And I'm not a watercolorist, but I said, first, Gracie, do a little pencil sketch of what you want to color, anything you want to draw, and then take your watercolor and color it in accordingly, and so forth. And she did that. She is a really good student. Anyway, she's terrific in music. Her father, Alan Beal, is a competent musician. Right. He's been playing around the California, Northern California quite a bit. In fact, the buildings that we're remodeling, there's 2 large rooms in them that I'm going to dedicate to music, and also the little dome that I fabricated on the roof. I go inside and I play the flute, and the focal point of the dome is just at the center of the it's a decagon. It sits on a decagon. And the focal center is at the equator of the 2-frequency geodesic. It makes it very simple to construct. And you get terrific. So I play the flute just above that. About 18 inches above. I sit on one of my little yoga stools.
Will be the lesson of the Ascended Masters.
If somebody unmuted, I'd like to keep the background a little cleaner, and then a little later we can invite people to come in. Just in about 10 minutes or so. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I'm just hearing some background noise here. Okay, no, I'm talking to anybody that's on the line, not you, Weldon. I don't know what's going on in your space, but if there's other people that they have.
It's quite quiet. The motor have spent their week of insanity here, raising the drone of 2-cycle motors, driving people crazy until they left town. So now it's like a vacuum. It's like quiet. Lovely.
And consciousness.
Somebody should star 6, because it gets when there's talking going on besides Belden and I, it gets a little confusing. Anyway, yeah, keep going here. Yeah,
all right, let's see, where was I? Right now, I'd like to mass produce some of these. I have a vision that a group of turned-on people could build a whole geodesic village of different designs and solve the refugee problem on this planet. With the technology, the problem of the refugees isn't a political problem, but the politicians have taken it over, and of course they'll screw it up really bad. Wait till the next president gets in office, things will really get abnormal. Abnormal, AB normal in the what was it, The Bride of Frankenstein with Marty something and Gene Wilder, and they get a brain and Dr. Frankenstein says, what was the label on the brain? And he said, AB something, AB normal.
Yeah, I don't remember that, but
yeah. So, when I received the Everlasting Gospel, the one that's in print, I was reading it all the way through because I read the manuscripts and I made notes. I was like one of the unseen editors of it. I made different notes in its beginning, in its production, and so I wanted to read it from cover to cover to see how it read as a printed artifact, a piece of work that transformed the world. And so I'm reading it, and then I'm toward the end of the last chapter is a kind of a like transcendence or something, an interesting thing. And I said, well, I'll finish it up later, but in the meantime, I'll turn on the radio, TV. I'll turn on the TV because there's usually when you get this high in the energies, there's usually some negative effect that's coming in. Like at the Whole Earth Festival one year, a munitions train blew up, not 20 miles away. Anyway, so I distinctly remember remember putting on the TV, and all there was the that movie, The Bride of Frankenstein. So I watched it a little bit, and I said, so much for negative effects. I turned it off, and I went to sleep. So the next morning, it's, I don't know, between 8 and 9 o'clock, my daughter calls me. She said, turn on the television. An airplane just crashed into the World Trade Center.
Oh.
So I did in time to see the second airplane crash in. And then when all those buildings came down, that shows you the ignorance of the American culture. And they call themselves Americans like the Mexicans and the Africans do, because they leave cans all over their planet. So
great litter.
Those all three buildings, the two twin towers and the building 7 was brought down. It just had a simple fire, and no steel frame building was ever collapsed by fire alone. It always the only way you could take them down was through demolition, and those buildings fell straight down. If they were hit by an airplane coming laterally to it, the most it could have done was crinkle some of the framing to cause the building to lift. But those buildings came down, and every architect or structural engineer who knows anything about structures, and they've already documented that. But the political situation is so bad in America that they could lie to the people and present all this bullshit and these phony investigations while they destroy a major structure like that. Also, it was a big insurance claim because when it was destroyed, they had an asbestos problem that wouldn't stop. So hey, why spend all the cash when you can collect insurance and blow off all the asbestos to the people in New York? I mean, that shows you how the political world has degenerated in their excuses to go to war, because war is a big business. Take the money out of war, and you'll end it.
Yeah, and think of all that could be put into creating good things, creating just wonderful things to serve the people in our country rather than wasting it all on war.
Our mission, we are to build the kingdom of God, an actual building.
Right.
So if I entered politics, all the money that I would receive would be to build a demonstration on how all the people can have absolute freedom, security, and abundance, one of our slogans in our communal living. So the demonstration we put on was fantastic, and it's recorded in the morphic resonance of the planet's aura. So, and as hard as they try to get rid of it by playing all these money games, it's still there. It just keeps coming back, you know.
Well, it's right. It's just right in harmony. Yes, in harmony. It's just
the fact that a group of people made this terrific demonstration that not only went regional and national across the continent, it went all over the world to every nation, kindred, and tongue. And that's a prophecy. The spirit, any people building the kingdom of God here and now are entering into that morphic resonance of formative causation to produce the ways and means of sustaining life on this planet. Now, Buckminster Fuller dedicated his whole life to that, and that's why he's remembered and his and I have an interesting story about Buckminster Fuller that I'll talk about in our next program as far as the Buckminster Fuller Institute. Oh, I mentioned Grunch of the Giants, one of his last books, but I didn't mention Critical Path. Critical Path is really an important book because if you combine that with Nikola Tesla's work, you have a system of extracting energy and producing mind over matter structures world around, which is going to happen anyway, no matter what, because like Steve Jobs proved it, and all these people who became billionaires because they were steps ahead of the establishment in producing the artifacts that would do what the networking that people are doing right now.
Yeah, Bucky Fuller was definitely ahead of his time and definitely a visionary, and really stood out like Tesla, of course. Yeah, I mean, gosh, he was way back there, in time, beginning of the turn of the century. But the kind of things that he came forth with, wow, they were just amazing.
Do you remember the communal complex I designed? Was channeled to me when we were in Berkeley, and Charles Lobdell, a fine artist, shared a studio, and I was doing these drawings based on the knowledge I was getting in our communal complex, and that plan is a 50-year. It was so advanced that it wasn't built. There were components of it demonstrated. Some people built a 60-foot diameter sphere, geodesic sphere, and in the plan, which was 144 feet in a hexagonal diameter, which is symbolic, there was a 60-foot diameter sphere for light shows and music and so forth. And if you look carefully at the design of the floor plans that were actually specifically laid out, like the office and the clothing school and the child care and the natural food restaurant, if you look at that, all those components should be built now. The time is the 50 years that Buckminster Fuller talked about in the time warp between innovation and invention in architecture and its application. Architecture and housing has the worst time lag of all the disciplines. Yeah, all the types of houses that are built just square boxes, and energetically, it's not good for the way the energy flows in those structures. Here's a little thing about it. See, our educational system is geared to specialization. And of specialization, people wrote a paper that as species tend towards hyper-specialization, they become extinct. So we're doing our part to become extinct. However, basically, if you go to college, you learn more and more about less and less. And now all those people know everything about nothing.
Yeah, but they aren't being taught the most essential, important things towards building a better
scam,
world.
Yeah. It's a big scam. They say, hey, you come and spend, you take out a loan and come to our college and you'll get a job, a high-paying job at the end. So that racket is coming to its end because people are getting internet degrees to avoid the high cost of what they called education. And Pink Floyd wrote a song called that had the lyrics, "We don't need no education."
Right,
If you analyze what they're actually saying, is that we don't need no education. What we do need is a real system of education that demonstrates how to do things by the actual experience in the doing. And that's in the Everlasting Gospel, along with the 6 billionaires that come to put on seminars. They were appointed by the creation to put on seminars all over this planet to teach people how to live on this planet in harmony with its energies and actually produce the kingdom of God's kingdom, or a heaven on earth, or utopia, whatever you want to call it, or the new age and so forth. So, and the churches can't get with it. They're stuck in the seventh density, which Alan was told, it's ciphered. It says, seal up, in the Bible, it says, seal up the words of the seven thunders and utter them not. That means people are supposed to stop all this religious hoopla-doodla and actually get into the nuts and bolts of providing food, clothing, shelter, care, transportation, and recreation for all the people on the planet on one high standard, and end the hierarchical money elitism that's ubiquitous everywhere.
That because they are still in the grounded sense. They're still stuck in the old world. So we need to have, and they're controlled by the controllers. And then just talking about the churches now, I mean the structure. They're controlled by those that want to control humanity.
I'll tell you, Buckminster Fuller exposed that in his stories. At one time you had all the masters behind the scenes in finance. You had the Rothschild banking system, and what they did is they controlled all the information that would come to them by funding the universities, and the universities were told that anything you learn has to be channeled through the old masters who controlled the world, and because they wanted they set up specialization, which is anticipatory dividing and conquering the people into specialists, so they couldn't challenge the more comprehensive masters of finance and the shipping of goods around the world and so forth. They controlled everything. These were in America the barons, the railroad barons, and all these people took control of the industry in capitalism, and they didn't know how to share with the people, the workers, except Henry Ford made some inroads on that. And in Bucky Fuller's Everything I Know About the Universe, he talks about Henry Ford quite a bit. In fact, his Dymaxion car used a small Ford engine. It might have been the smallest one, but at any rate, they gave inventors a substantial discount. So the Dymaxion cars were operated by Ford engines, and they were placed midship in the center of gravity of the Dymaxion, and they could cruise at 120 miles per hour with a rear steering system, rear wheel, like it was designed like the rudder of an airplane. And that the automobile was a compromise from the jet still Dymaxion transport and so forth. Which
and when were they actually built? I mean, when were they?
1938, around 1938.
And did people own them and drive them, and were they produced by the Ford Motor Company?
No. Kaiser was interested in it, as I know, and there was an accident, and then Buckminster Fuller was the grand failure of technology. He said at some point in my life I had to decide whether I wanted to make money or make sense, and he chose to make sense.
Right. Well, the powers that be wouldn't want that to exist because it would cut into their profits from petroleum.
Also, the time wasn't right for But the Dymaxion car could have been produced, and it came very close. but circumstances led it away. But the Dymaxion house was too technical to be installed, and Fuller pulled out of it when they wanted to only have one prototype and start mass producing them, because he saw a can of worms in delivering them. Because, in fact, one of his inventions, the component bathroom, and I believe the Dymaxion house, which had all internally produced electric and waste systems and water systems and so forth. In order for them to be installed, say, in New York, the unions had to take it all apart and inspect it. That's like people cutting open a drum to see where the sound came from.
No.
The code said that they would have to take them apart and check them and put them back together, which made, and no banks would finance it and so forth. It just was, the whole system could not produce the innovations that Fuller brought. And that's why they say he's ahead of his time, which is kind of a cliche, because he was right on time to produce that. In fact, I want to point out one thing. See, a lot of this stuff wasn't produced because, in fact, it wasn't until the 1980s, the early 1980s, that the first writing about this solar catastrophe, which describes how the whole solar system was ruined. Because in normal universe, people don't live on the outside of a planet. When pumpkins grow, all the seeds are on the inside. And the same thing with planets in other solar systems. They're like geodes, where you break them open, you see all the crystals. Well, that's how
people live inside the planets.
So they live inside planets. That's the one thing that Star Trek didn't do. In fact, one of the things I want to do is get a movie company going to make films to enlighten people about this, and I know that we would be channeled from other solar systems and planetary bodies with actual visuals on how people live in normal universe to prepare people for this great transcendental meditation.
Well, this appears to be the time that so much of this is, the changes are taking place and the shifts are taking place, and that it's very timely, as we talk about on the other Diamond shows, that these great shifts that are happening. In fact, today, March 15th, the Ides of March, is supposed to be a powerful day in this regard. You know, I can't give you the details right now, but this is supposed to be a very powerful day. And let's see, it's almost 5:30 now. We started 10 minutes late.
Isn't that when they assassinate political and military people like Julius Caesar? Beware the Ides of March.
Yeah, that's what happened in the past. Well, I want to open it up now and see if anybody on the line wants to make a comment or ask a question.
Okay.
Star 6 if you're muted, because we'd like to have at least 10 minutes or more of comments. Yeah. Hello, anybody? Yeah, Jeff, that's right.
Hello.
Is there somebody out there that, aside from myself, that has some comments or questions? This is Dale speaking.
Who is it?
This is Dale Blomé, Bill, and I'm the co-host with Sonny.
Good. Oh, okay,
and
good.
Here's the this question I have that's always begging, and in putting this whole program together, is to get a core group of the essential parts of the intentional community or alternative community, and that, of course, is architecture and agriculture and the various components that make up civilization. You know, education and so on and so forth. And you touched on a wide range of subjects, and it's always an issue of time. And I personally have taken kind of the position of recruiting those people that I feel are appropriate, and this is an open invitation to you. And honestly, there's no pressure. Only if you feel compelled that this is a good place for you to spend your time for 1 hour a month on Tuesday, completely devoted to the world of architecture. And really,
well, you have touched on one of my prime first loves.
Well, then listen, let's just say great minds think alike, and then we have something to look forward to. And you could pick any Tuesday of the month that's convenient for the 1 hour, because you know the most valuable thing we have is time. And I have about 10,000 hours of conversation that you've just provoked, and we can't do it in a 1 hour show.
Yeah.
What's your name again, sir?
My name is Dale Blome. Last name is Blome, Blome. Yeah, I'm the co-host with Sunny.
Right, so, I got that. I didn't get your last name. Dale, yes. I am right in tune with that, and I have for 30 years I've been collecting advanced books on architecture. So if I got a beautiful letter from Bart Prince. Are you familiar with his work? He finished Bruce Goff's Japanese Pavilion in Los Angeles. And he's done some extraordinary work. And then Eugene Say has produced some great work. A few prototypes was featured. The house he did for his parents was featured in earthquake-proof architecture, and that's in the Bay Area. And then I have books on John Lautner. I photographed him before he passed away, and after I photographed him, I realized that was the last frame in my camera. So you know that picture of Frank Lloyd Wright sharpening a pencil, and his apprentice realized that was the last frame in this roll of film, and that's a kind of a famous photograph. Well, I have a picture of John Lautner. Are you familiar with John Lautner? He was an apprentice to Frank Lloyd Wright, and so forth.
I'm well aware of Frank Lloyd Wright and the school that he had in Arizona. Was he in Arizona when at that particular school?
He was John Lautner.
Yeah.
And he was involved in the Johnson Wax Building and the Falling Water and and all those buildings, and
beautiful,
especially the Johnson Wax Building. His mother came for a special viewing inside the building when it was completed. And when she experienced the inside of the building and realized that John was a major player in the drawings and so forth of the building, she just fell down on her knees and wept. That was quite interesting.
Well, Belda, I was going to say, can you give me your email address and we'll communicate, and we can establish the Tuesday program of the month that you will declare under the heading of architecture, and you can join Sonny and I as co-host.
Oh, great. Well, I don't have I've been using my son's email, and we're under siege, and we're restoring two major houses here in Florida.
Okay.
But, I wanted to just add one thing before we get into that. and that is I've been promoting the idea. My daughter really liked the term of a series of programs, actually exhibitions of the work of major architects called Heroes of Modern Architecture. So Heroes of Modern Architecture, that would be a program I'm promoting that's close to my vision. I wanted to tell you a little story. Are you familiar with the work of Eric Lloyd Wright, Frank Lloyd Wright's grandson?
I heard of it, and I just can't picture any of the structures in my mind, but I know I've read about it and I heard about it.
Well, he worked with his father on that fabulous church of the Wayfirst Church in south of Los Angeles.
Oh yeah, Palos Verdes.
Yeah, Palos Verdes. That's it. That church.
I grew up in Manhattan Beach, and I spent a lot of time in Palos Verdes, and I probably in my earlier years drove by that thing at least twice a week.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, my friend Joseph and I took a bicycle ride out there, and we photographed it. Well, Eric Lloyd Wright, Lloyd Wright's son, Frank Lloyd Wright's grandson, was a draftsman for that building. Anyway, I started my architectural bibliography by going to the library, and I got like 3 memo-sized lists of Frank Lloyd Wright's publications. You know, like the Testament and so on, his major books. And I even made 3 copies that I took Host Beautiful that featured Frank Lloyd Wright's work exclusively. And I cut out all the advertising and made a new book without any advertising, just whatever text was of Frank Lloyd Wright. I produced 3 booklets of it. It was kind of neat. Well, anyway, in the course of in my search for books at bookstores, I found a copy of the Testament. So I had it on the table, and my mother was sitting there, the little Jewish lady, and I don't practice any religion, but she was what you'd call a very ethical Jew, and she abhorred usury and wanted her host to be paid off. So she was she was the opposite of the kind of people that the Rothschilds would like to know. Anyway,
well,
I'm talking to Eric Lloyd Wright, and I have Frank Lloyd Wright's books on the table, and my mother's listening and so forth. And then he's quite a progressive person, and I wish he got lots of work. And then when I finished, I hung up and I turned to my mother and I said, "Do you know who I was just talking with?" And she said, "No, who?" I said, "I was talking to the grandson of this man." I held up the Testament with Frank Lloyd Wright's picture, and I said, "He was one of the most astounding architects in the United States." And my mother turns to me and she says, "Was it a toll call?"
Yeah, well, you know, that's somebody's got to think about the pennies so the dollars take care of themselves.
Yeah.
Well, you guys, you sounds like you don't tell them. Do you want to be on once a month?
Yeah. Let me write this down, Dale.
Yes, sir. I and it's just for the 1 hour, you know, and then we can start building some format and some continuity and some coherency to what I want to do is, and that's basically what you mentioned, is get the General Sun Tzu, who wrote The Art of War, is the supreme art in war is to subdue your enemies without fighting them. And I think that goes along with Buckminster Fuller's idea of, create a better model that makes the old model obsolete. So I think that's the thing that's lacking is that model has to be created, and it has to be real so people can see it, and then they'll throw this civilization out the window like they did their rotary telephones,
Uh-huh.
Well,
how do you spell your last name, Dale?
Blome, B as in boy, L-O-M-E, Blome. Yeah, just B-L-O-M as in
B-L-O-M-E? Is there a little mark over the M?
Yeah, it's French. My first name.
There's something I wanted to say, meant to say at the beginning, and on the Monday show, yesterday, the Diamond Show, we have a astrologer, Cynthia, and she comes out with some really interesting, she reads the exact degrees, and she read something about last night about Jupiter in Virgo in a certain degree, and that was very much highlighting architecture and redoing the structures of society and and layout of villages and all of these things that would be in harmony with the natural energies of the earth, the ley lines, and the natural streams and waterways, and that the harmonious. So she was talking about that, and I was thinking that lines perfectly with having Belden on tomorrow's show.
The architecture of the universe is the architecture of all things. The believing, thinking, reasoning, knowing, doing, and so it's not just building a structure that's lifeless. It's creating a way of life that incorporates how we live and what we live in.
Yeah, it has to be harmonious. It has to be. It should be. It's harmonious with our own energies of our body and our etheric energies and the Earth's energies. The Earth's energies all needs to be in harmony.
Excuse me, just a second, Sonny. I just wanted, Belden, would it be okay with you if Sonny gave me your phone number and I got in contact with you?
I was just going to we're telepathically in tune. 831.
Hold on, let me get my pencil.
I can do it. Yeah. Email.
Okay. Yeah, Sonny. Sonny, is it the same number that Sonny's got?
Yeah.
Okay.
Cell phone.
She'll give it to me.
It's not my number. I mean, he's got a. I can give you his number in an email if that would be.
Yeah, give it to him right now. 831-747-7252.
Okay.
831-747-7252.
Okay, and the other question, Bill, the other question I have. Let me read that back to you. That's 831-741.
No, 747.
747-7252.
Correct.
Okay. And then what is a good time to call you?
Between 10 and 10. 10.
Okay, so I'll give you a call and then we'll have a discussion how to proceed with this.
Yeah, one of the highlights I'd like to do is to promote the exhibition of the Heroes of Modern Architecture that would be, every month you'd have like 3 architects or architects who were associated, featured at one time with visuals and things like that. There's a lot of information. Eero Saarinen's airport, the Dulles Airport. Are you familiar with that?
I've heard a lot of well, it's is it Dallas Fort Worth? It's connected.
No, Dulles on the East Coast.
Oh,
it has these great concrete pylons that come through the roof, and the roof drapes down. It's a hung roof. And his TWA airport. Well, I have a great rendering that was in Fortune magazine that I picked up at the flea market, and I put on poster board. And there's a lot of visuals will show up, and I'd like to see a real knocked out exhibition.
Guys, we're going over time now, and I want to see. It's great. You guys can talk to each other, and I want to see if anybody else is on the line here that wants to say anything before we close the show. I mean, it's wonderful that you're connecting and that you're inspiring each other. I feel that's great.
What's Dale Blamet's phone number?
Okay, it's area code 562. That's 326-4197.
49 what?
4197. 562-326-4197.
4197.
Yeah. And you could look at any time the spirit moves. You can call me 24/7, Belden.
Oh, okay.
I'm totally dedicated to get moving this thing forward ASAP.
Yeah.
Remember, you got it's 3 hours time difference. Time frame here, East Coast, West Coast.
Let me say one thing more that's very important. In the Everlasting Gospel, page 25 and page 36, and then it's mentioned again, and it talks about the schools of experience and learning process. And it also mainly talks about 6 billionaires are appointed by the creation God to put on Everlasting Gospel seminars. And one of the things that we could do at the seminars is have exhibitions of heroes of modern architecture. So of the 6 billionaires, I've been talking to people about a millionaires club. In order to enter the millionaires club, you need $1,000 to spend on your personal needs, and that's it. And you invite millionaires. Millionaires are invited to share their secrets of becoming a millionaire and to help other people become millionaires. But the point of it is to get 1,000 millionaires together of one mind who become 1 billionaire of the 6 billionaires appointed by creation to put on these free seminars in luxury hotels all over the world. How do you like that?
About building a new world. About building a new world.
It's funny that you mention that because, Bill Gates and Warren Buffett and people like Ted Turner, they formed it's called the 600 Club. And it's a group of billionaires that what their purpose is to get involved in philanthropic enterprises, and by the time they die, they want to have spent all their money,
Who said that? Carnegie?
No, it is a group of billionaires already. And
no, I'm talking about anyone who hasn't spent all their money before they pass on are fools.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. You can't take it with you. But the critical thing about this is they finally realize what the key is to wealth. And it's the velocity and exchange of money. And so what's happening, since all of the money is gotten in the hands of a few people, they realize that the future of the world depends on them getting rid of it and getting it into circulation and making things happen.
You said the key term in the everlasting gospel.
Get rid of money.
A bank called GROM, GROM. I even made little boxes to fill with $100 bills, which turned to be a disaster. I got robbed.
Look, you guys.
In my GROM box.
Well, listen, I'm gonna.
We need to close the show. We need to.
We need to close the show, Sheldon, and
okay,
I'll call you.
Great talking to you.
Yeah.
Let me see if there's anyone else who wants to talk.
My pleasure, sir.
Yes, I'm so glad that this was a very successful show and very stimulating. And let's. So if I don't think there's anybody else here that wants to say anything, but we just, we need to close. The other shows are much longer.
I'm just glad to be here tonight. I'm holding space for Misty.
Oh.
I couldn't be here.
Oh, okay. Well, that's really nice. Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad you were here.
That he's committed to show up once a month, and we're going to have lively discussion. So hold that thought.
Very lively, yeah. It's hard to end them.
Where's Dale live?
Well,
where's Dale place that he calls his own? Where's that?
Here, I'm in Long Beach.
Long Beach,
California.
Long Beach, California.
Yeah. Southern, yeah. So it's in Southern California. I'm in Northern California. Well,
Jan and Joe Hauer are in Long Beach.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just saw her post she posted on my Facebook responding to the post I made about doing the show with you. She was
really?
and Joseph too. They both posted there. So Joseph was on the show in the fall. He was the first one little family person that was on the show, and then we had Chris of Sharing Gardens, Chris and Lynn on separate shows, and Gabriel, he was on. Yeah. Ash, I guess that's the name he uses. But anyway,
his mother's maiden name.
Yeah, that's the name he has up on Facebook anyway.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But listen, this has been a really good show, and I'm going to just thank you all for being here, and we will move forward.
Yes, ma'am.
Catalyzing time into the new age and the new world.
One closing note is that this show is the beginning of the fulfillment of why I'm here remodeling these houses in Long Beach.
All right. Well, and there'll be people that'll listen to this on once it gets on YouTube. Usually I have in the 30s, 40s, and sometimes more people listening to this. After it gets recorded and it gets put up on the Diamonds Forever blog website, and Elizabeth will promote it. She always promotes the shows, and so we always check back and see how many people have heard it. And it's surprising sometimes how many people listen later. So that's great. I was surprised that Joseph was doing radio programs. He never invited me to do one with him, but I guess he's in Sacramento now and starting to do that. And Jeannie's interested in talking to you, and but I shouldn't talk about all these things on the recording. But Jeannie was on one of the shows too.
Oh,
so
great.
He's interested in this program, this what we're doing here.
Well, channel for us to get some hotshot labor here so we can button up these houses and get them accommodating travelers. Right out of the first precept of the everlasting gospel. Let each of us share all the world and call one place of our choosing, and be free to come and go in the world and stay at travelers, stay at dwellings accommodating travelers.
Yeah, well, that they should all be all over the place so we can go and.
Yeah, well, they will be.
We need to change the world into a planet that is accommodating.
Yeah, well, that's how it was when we had the Maui project, and I went over there and was able to be a part of that, in the late 70s. But anyway, I need to close the show, so thank you all, and we will meet again.
And it's a pleasure to meet you, Belden. I'll be giving you a call shortly.
Great. May God's Spirit be with all of you and fulfill your mission.
Also. Okay, good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night. Bye-bye.
Good night. Thank you, Sonny.
Are you looking for healing or a change in your life to help you enjoy it more fully? You might benefit from a galactic energy reading and clearing from Chris Jacobs. Chris will work with you on a soul level to clear unseen negative influences, implants, programs, contracts, and energetic blocks. Chris Jacobs is a gifted energy healer. Contact him today at ChristopherStephenJacobs@gmail.com.